While the world awaits a clean break and a clear victory over a global pandemic, the supply chain carries on. Demand, disruptions, and delays have driven the course of the supply chain through a gauntlet of challenges over the past 2 years. What has become clear to all observers is that the supply chain is not only complicated, but is also organic in its own way. It is also surprisingly resilient and often rapidly flexible to a degree unknown before the pandemic. However, at times over the past 2 years, the concepts of supply chain certainty and reliability have taken a beating as the entire system evolves to adjust to new developments and previously unknown obstacles. Moreover, the biggest challenge occurring before, during, and after the pandemic subsides will remain. That seemingly intractable challenge involves achieving a regional consensus regarding what constitutes sustainability and everything it entails in the movement of freight. It may well be that the future is all about chasing elusive sustainability. First, the supply chain has become more complicated because of online shopping and the dynamics related to it. E-commerce emerged more than 15 years ago, but exploded during the pandemic because of the ease and necessity of having goods delivered to the front door. The impact on brick-and-mortar retail has been substantial and often devastating. According to the research publication Digital Commerce 360, online sales increased by 44% in 2020, and for the first time in history accounted for 101% of all retail sales growth in that year. All other forms of retail were flat or declined. Online shopping in 2020 amounted to 21.3% of all retail sales, up from 14.3% in 2018 and 15.8% in 2019. This phenomenal annual growth rate of 5.5% of retail market share by e-commerce never materialized before the pandemic. Previously, the typical increase was in the range of 1.5% and never reached 2%.
Before the supply chain crises that we were experiencing now, there was a real sort of adversarial position towards holding stockpile or safety stock inventory because of the cost. But now, as we've seen, many companies gain market share if they had stockpiled inventory because they were the only, company still standing to serve their customers. That relationship holding strategic stockpiles of inventory will be different than it was before. That's maybe a crack in the paradigm, but I don't think there's a wholesale shift yet.
In 2020, established e-commerce businesses like Amazon and eBay and major retail chains with highly developed online purchasing platforms were suddenly joined by many smaller businesses and local retailers in competition for consumers' dollars. Any product ordered which involved overseas manufacturing then required space on a container ship, a berth in a West Coast marine terminal, a truck or train to bring it to a warehouse, and then a last-mile delivery to the consumer's door. The multiplication factor in the dramatic upsurge of e-commerce has not reduced goods movement traffic, nor congestion, nor the need for warehousing space. Demand for all goods continued to increase through 2021, showing a 2-year increase of above 20%, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. As more people work from home and lifestyles adjust, more goods are delivered to homes and neighborhoods, making the last mile a well-worn path. Compounding the problem, online retail has adopted a policy and practice of free returns, creating an incentive for consumers to buy and return products with a much more cavalier attitude than would be the case if the consumers had to physically return the products to brick-and-mortar outlets. Free delivery and free return may be good sales tactics, but those features can make the finality of purchasing a drawn-out process. Everyone wants to shop with maximum convenience, but no one cheers the prospect of a new warehouse coming soon to the neighborhood. Especially hard hit are residents living in overburdened communities.
And we're talking about residential areas where trucks and containers are moved through, as well as railroads, and the impact that it has in the children. For example, they can't go out to play. They have to stay inside due to the diesel emissions. And most of our children in Wilmington have asthma. We're like one of the highest concentrations of asthma in the nation. So if you imagine having all this movement of goods, movement through a community of 55,000, the majority suffer from asthma already. They need to know that this is happening and taking place in Wilmington, for example. And I'm sure it's not only Wilmington, there's other places.
The conventional understanding of sustainability is measured by 3 different yardsticks: economic viability, environmental quality, and social equity. While those 3 considerations are clearly an essential part of the equation, there is more to the story than just those 3. Consumer demand, access to vital products, changes in purchasing patterns, and competition for scarce resources can affect the supply chain and its ability to sustain the needs of an impatient and restless society. The organic nature of the supply chain's responses to current problems means that sustainability planning needs to include an elasticity factor, often not considered when establishing mandates and goals. Perhaps the most contentious topic within the conversation of sustainability is the specter of growth and what the concept of growth means. Growth can have various implications. To those with a business interest, growth is considered a positive development and a goal. Growth represents profits as well as hope and confidence for future viability. It also usually includes more jobs and more opportunities, which offers social mobility and societal benefits for workers in the community. This pro-growth position adopts an optimistic view that a rising tide lifts all boats. In that optimistic perspective, economic and social equity are positively addressed and dovetailed.
Maybe logistics and supply chain doesn't have to be a bad place to work that people don't want in their communities. It is certainly an area that is ripe for the latest technology. It is particularly as we implement more technological solutions, it can be highly skilled labor and highly trained labor. I think that, a distribution center can be like a really state-of-the-art factory, the kind of thing that people want as an employer in their communities.
From the non-business perspective, growth is often perceived as a negative. It implies congestion, more pollution, traffic, and a diminished quality of life in the neighborhood. For regions like Southern California, the prospect of growth faces fierce resistance and opposition based on the fear of harmful consequences for residents in communities slated for growth. This no-growth position assumes a zero-sum game is being played, where if one side gains, it necessarily takes something away from the other side. The environmental concerns take center stage, and social equity is perceived as receding rather than progressing.
It is important communication at this time. It is very important to communicate effectively, truthfully, and with transparency, and not looking at one's best interest or the other one, because I think we are all in this together.
Sometimes, growth is misunderstood in reference to what causes it in the first place. Whether sustainable or not by traditional definitions, growth often happens for reasons which go beyond the mere encouragement of business and marketing enterprises. The massive surge in online purchasing which occurred because of the pandemic was not anticipated to develop so rapidly. Ultimately, growth in Southern California's freight delivery is determined by the consumers who also live in some of the neighborhoods which are objecting to growth. What has developed in the past 2 years is not so much a matter of businesses pushing cargo through the San Pedro Bay, rather, it is the consumers pulling their desired products through the ports. California's very aggressive greenhouse gas mandates and zero emissions policies are moving the industry toward rapid introduction of electrification at all levels. While the mandates will result in less air pollution and a major overall reduction in carbon-related emissions, questions remain about the cost, the feasibility of full transition by 2030, and whether the abundance of electrical power required will be available at crunch time. There is also an equity concern regarding how electrification and related automation will affect jobs in the waterfront industry. Finally, it is clear there will be a conflict between an inflexible zero emissions mandate with a hard and fast date and an organic supply chain which responds to daily and monthly challenges and is limited by technological advances. As a result, an argument is being made for a longer transition period to zero emissions. The solution could involve renewable natural gas or feature the use of transitional near-zero emissions technologies and fuels.
We know that the state of California and other like-minded states are pushing for electrification faster than some other states, and that's fine. We see the customers there are moving forward in that kind of way. We will be there to help those customers move into that electrified space. In other spots where it's a little slower, or maybe the use case is a little different, maybe we see that kind of incremental change going at a bit of a slower pace. But when we look with a long enough time horizon, clearly this is the path that everybody's traveling. All major OEMs have now started to move in this direction. We have been very clear about our targets for the year 2040 to be 100% electrified.
One silver lining of the pandemic purchasing experience is the mass education of the general population about the significant workings of the supply chain. Before March of 2020, few consumers outside of those directly affected by logistics spoke openly about it. Now, almost everyone has become surprisingly sophisticated in daily discussions about supply chain dynamics. Those discussions often incorporate resignation about the perceived new normal, involving rapid price inflation, shortages, and long waiting times for needed items.
Sustainability doesn't have a set measure. It's not like a dipstick, and a firm can just go, put it in. Oh, I've got enough sustainability. Let's go on down the road. It's always going to change. So I think it will always be elusive in that, what people demand from the companies they shop from will never just have a sustainability checkoff. It will change with time.
Other important matters affecting the sustainability of the supply chain in Southern California include land use, involving urban and suburban planning. The state, cities, and local communities will have to make major decisions about the most appropriate utilization of available land. Those decisions will impact the efficiency of the system. Residential planning will need to be balanced with the growing consumer demand for products delivered from warehouses within reasonable distances. Supportive infrastructure is clearly on the table as well. In the end, a growing population combined with a now certain future involving rapid e-commerce expansion will push the supply chain to deliver more goods to more people. Consumers will be less likely to do as much driving to brick-and-mortar retail centers. Specialty items, such as clothing requiring a tailor's touch or a perfect fit, will be the exceptions. Otherwise, there will be fewer cars and minivans at the remaining malls, but more delivery trucks making last-mile trips. Will the net result be fewer greenhouse gas emissions? Will the issues of supply and demand and the factors involved with overseas manufacturing be addressed? One of the benefits of technological progress is the ability to analyze data going beyond limited linear human thinking. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and artificial neural networks hold promise in coordinating information from a 3D perspective. Perhaps this enhanced real-time intelligence can provide solutions for efficiency problems, congestion relief, planning concerns, just-in-time delivery requirements, inventory control, and other issues. Many questions still remain. Will sustainability continue to be a moving target as consensus remains elusive for the greater society? Or will sustainability simply be a potential rather than an actual destination in a final analysis befitting the tragic philosophers of ancient Greece?